Kirk Lippold, the former USS Cole commander. Commander, always good having you. I know it's kind of scant information to go on. I apologize. So we're trying to make sure of what we do know, and that these attacks are on. Don't know how widespread, don't know how many, don't know their severity, just that they're on. What do you think of them?
Well, first thing I would say, Neil, is thank you for having me on the show, especially in this developing news environment. But when you look at it, we in the military refer to something called operational security, or OPSEC. With the Biden administration so clearly telegraphing this to Iran and the proxy groups throughout the region, it has given them an opportunity to move their people. All the Iranian Republican Guard Corps members are essentially out of Syria and back in Iran proper. It has given our enemies an opportunity to move their weapons, to move their command and control and shift it, to move personnel out of the way. So in effect, while trying to contain this so that it does not expand into larger regional, we're conducting strikes that ultimately will prove not only ineffective, but in fact give our enemy some idea of how we intend to conduct operations in the future. That's a more dangerous precedent to have set.
So in doing so, and we did get word that a lot of sites that feared maybe, or those who are in those sites feared they might be targeted, they have plenty of time to get out, right, to hide, to go somewhere. Do we factor that into our planned attacks then, or how do we juggle that?
Well, I think, Neil, when you look at how these attacks were going to be conducted, the United States hopefully took the time, especially with the planning going on in the operational division of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, along with the combatant commanders, to ensure that their staffs work together, that the strikes would be effective, not only on the proxy groups that are attacking us, but why don't we make it a twofer? What is Iran giving these proxy groups that are also allowing them to conduct attacks out of Lebanon into northern Israel? What are they doing to enhance Hamas and their ability to continue to conduct sustained operations post-October 7th in Israel? What do we have for longer-term threat for our forces in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Jordan, so that we can determine what is the future threat as well, and how can we degrade it? Or what can our actions do that will cause our enemy to begin to move, to be able to disclose what their future plans may be, in which case then we can adjust our targeting very quickly. That will give us that opportunity then to help eliminate future threats as well. So it's a very robust environment. We are targeting now, but we're also keeping an eye on what our enemy is doing in response to it so that we can adjust the targeting to make sure that we eliminate as many threats as possible for both our security and Israel's as well.
Commander, Tehran, as you know, has been denying any direct involvement. In fact, it tried to distance itself from its own proxies. I can crassly, paraphrase that to say, sometimes they just go rogue and do things. Now, that's probably not the intention of those remarks, but what do you make of that? Because in making this statement, the Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi, had said, we will not start any war, but if anyone wants to bully us, they will receive a strong response. At the same time, he's clearly talking about, and no doubt anxious about, this planned U.S. response. So puts him in a bit of a pickle.
Neil, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't put him in a pickle at all. Iran has given every one of these terrorist proxy groups training, financing, operational capability, and weapons to be able to conduct the kinds of attacks that they're doing.
And we know that. We have said that, right, Commander? So I guess what I'm saying is he could talk all he wants about, what his country does and doesn't do, how much sway it has over its proxies or doesn't have. Fact of the matter is we tie all of this to him, to Iran, and that doesn't change.
Absolutely, right? Neil, and we should. Let's face it, as I've said before on your show, your enemy gets a vote on whether they're at war with you. Iran has essentially been fighting a proxy war with the United States, and in some ways directly, since 1979, and it has resulted in the deaths of hundreds of Americans in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and around the world. And the problem you have is that no administration to date, both Republican and Democrat, have been willing to solve the root problem, and that is Iran. And while a lot of people say we don't want to get involved in another Middle East war, we also have to look at how many service members or Americans are going to have to die before we are willing to adjust that root cause and begin to put the forces in place to be able to address it. Iran can say whatever they want. The bottom line is they are responsible for the actions of their groups that they have empowered and enabled. And in some ways, if you look on the other side of the world, keep an eye on North Korea, because China uses them in the same way that Iran uses their proxy groups. So it's not just here. There is a global dynamic in effect as well, and we need to make sure that we are able to respond to it. So we hold Iran accountable, because these groups would not exist and could not conduct these operations without the direct support that is coming from Iran.
Then the behavior has to change into the response to these counterattacks. We don't know much about the nature of the attacks and how many have been cited, Commander. We do know right now that the initial strikes included manned and unmanned aircraft hitting command and control headquarters in that region, again, extending into Iraq and Syria, and ammunition storage and other facilities, we are told. But one thing that's interesting as well, Commander, is when word first got out that we were going to respond to these Jordan attacks that killed those soldiers, it would be sweeping. And the message was from those potentially in harm's way to get out of harm's way, as I've been raising with a number of people. But it seems very clear at this early going, as I look at some of these updates, other groups, including this, Hezbollah splinter group and all, are claiming they had nothing to do with them and would not be targeting U.S. forces in general. But if attacks resume on our part to go after their attacks, they are going to resume, aren't they?
Absolutely. Every one of these proxy groups are now going to view a threat from America as an attack on them, and they're going to attempt to respond, which ultimately they would not be able to do that if it were not for the support given to them by Iran. And at some point, we are going to have to address it directly, and we're going to have to find a way to hold Iran accountable. When you look at the number of things that we can do, first and foremost, let's work with our European allies and allies in the region and snap back sanctions plus more put into place to crush the economy of Iran. Then we start doing maritime interdiction operations. What goes in or out of Iran gets inspected. If it's illegal, it gets sanctioned and taken. We don't allow it to go in. Then we begin to conduct operations as we're doing right now against all these proxy groups. But ultimately, we just tell Iran, we're going to keep ratcheting it up. And if you want to pick this fight, if you want to make it larger, if you want to expand this conflict and you have a choice, we will be able to take you down. Iran right now is in a tenuous position, and while they have a lot of money that have been given over the last 10 years, they, by the same token, could get cut off again, and we really need to consider that. There are non-kinetic, non-bomb making things that we can do to Iran that are going to hold them accountable for what they've done, and we need to put those in place immediately.
Commander, thank you very much.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.